Welcome in, listeners. This is Margin Mavens, a podcast hosted by Steph and Kayla, where we share our thoughts on all things literature. Today's episode is about Mandrake Manor by JP Rindfleisch IX, a book about inheriting more than just a house. Now, make sure to grab a snack and a drink unless you're driving, then remember 10 and 2, and come hang out with us while we dive in. First and foremost, the ninth?
Yep, it is true. It's not a author name. I am
That,
actually the ninth.
that is
Wild.
wild to me. I like the first time I
Yeah.
saw it, I was like, what does that Roman numeral stand for?
Oh no, I have to bring that back up from memory. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like,
no.
it's not a 5.
Yep.
um, okay, so going into before I let Kayla take over, going into kind of the writing aspect of it, what is first off your biggest inspiration? I know that this book was a series originally that you ended up publishing all together in like order. So, what is that like? You're the first author I think that we've ever spoken to that starts
Yeah.
it that way. Um, just talk your
Yeah.
talk.
So Mandrake Manor is very heavily inspired by Charmed, I would say. I think that that's pretty obvious. I make it very clear and everything because I grew up watching Charmed. I love Charmed. I just wanted a queer story that had that same vibe to it. And then there's a lot of other vibes mixed in with that. Schitt's Creek was another thing that I just absolutely adored. I loved that behind the scenes they talked about creating a world where there is just no homophobia, and that really triggered something where I was like, I want more of these stories where we can just sort of exist and there isn't really some type of conflict around it. It just shows that there is none of that negativity that needs to be there because it truly doesn't need to be there. And so that was sort of the bridge to how Mandrake Manor came to be. Mandrake Manor was my first solo written long form piece, and I published it on Kindle Vella, which was a serialized fiction platform. I have co-authors beforehand, and Nerds was another story, National Recently Deceased Services, that came out on Kindle Vella as well. Serialized fiction is basically these installments or chapters or episodes, as some people call it, and it is sort of like a long season or a long series. You can think of a lot of like manga and anime really like flow along with that. One Piece is basically a huge serial. So that's what that came from. Mandrake Manor, that book there is season one. There will be more, but yes, that's sort of the whole beginnings of it.
There better be more. Oh, there
Good.
better be more.
So, touching on to the like serial part of it, I guess. Like how does that go into like how you plan it?
Hmm.
Is there like a minimum that like each episode or chapter should be?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a little bit in the writing weeds, and I love this because I literally just had a presentation about serial fiction yesterday. So I'm more than happy to talk about serial fiction. Um, on Kindle Vella, which no longer exists, but there are a lot of similar platforms. There's Radish, there's Tapas, there's Wattpad. Webtoons kind of has it, but they're more obviously comics.
Right.
But you have to think about the fact that it's on a phone, so your
Yes.
reader is usually reading your chapters on a phone. The big thing there that we learned over on Kindle Vella, and I say we because I also ran a podcast called Serial Fiction Podcast, where our serial fiction show, where we ran it for a year. We interviewed other serial fiction authors, and we got kind of the vibe of everyone else and how they wrote. Um, but when you have someone reading on a phone, there's something that we learned called scroll fatigue, where someone's thumb is just like, I'm done. And we found that the sweet spot was between 800 and 2,000 words. So you'll see that most of my chapters are fairly uniform in length, ranging between 1,300 and 1,900 words. Conveniently, what I've learned from a lot of readers who've read the novel version is it makes it faster paced because there's no short chapter and then a long chapter and sort of that need to hesitate. You almost know how long it's going to take. So you're like, I can do one more because it's only going to take 15 minutes, or whatever it takes you. Um, so that became a really convenient thing on the novelization process. In terms of this book and how I knew where it was going to end, I did have the ending in mind for this first season. I knew like what kind of cliffhanger I wanted to put on there. Very familiar, very like similar to a TV show like Buffy or Charmed. Um, knowing how my big arc was going to go, how I was going to end it, and where I was going to leave that little thread for what could happen next. And then I wrote it. This one had a unique platform where I was doing POV switches every chapter, so I knew kind of the structure. So I had planned it for roughly about that many chapters, and there wasn't a lot of deviation when I started it. I did release them on a weekly process, and with serials, especially the way that I was doing it, I was pretty much writing the chapter the week before it released. So um, with this one, I was just building my readership, so I wasn't getting a lot of strong input that would drive the narrative. But then in my second serial, I had a little bit more interaction, and that was the thing I love about serials the most, was the proximity to the reader. With my next serial, which is Mosswood Apothecary, I had someone who left a comment that was just like, "Man, I love this little town we're in. I would love to know some history." And conveniently, we were still there when I was writing, so I had a good moment where I was like, "Oh, we're gonna dive into some history right here, and I'm gonna let you know." And I could see then when I published that one, like that person got really excited because I basically took their input and I was able to expand the world a little bit more. So that's why I love writing serials. I still do, just on different platforms.
Is there a platform that you prefer? I have no experience whatsoever with serials except I guess Wattpad, but I haven't touched Wattpad
Hmm.
because I think now there's like ads and stuff.
Yeah,
Question
yeah.
mark. So I haven't touched it.
So I'm moving over to Tapas, which owns Radish. They have web comics and web novels. They have a system where the first 10, I think it's the first 10 episodes or chapters are free, and then the next 10, you can read one, and then if you wait 3 hours, the next one unlocks, or you can use these little tokens and then pay for it. It's not very expensive, but it is like a way to sort of like pay per episode, and then there are different ways to like kick back to the author. But they reached out because they really liked how Mosswood Apothecary was doing on Kindle Vella, and they were like, can we take this?" And I was like, "Well, no, not at the moment." But I gave them another idea, and then I ended up working with them. So conveniently, when Kindle Vella closed, I have an avenue of where I'm headed next.
Gotcha. That's so interesting to me because I know, like, very off topic before we get into your book or anything, but I get a lot of book recommendations off of TikTok, right? And one of my
Hmm.
least favorite things that happens is I'll go to the comments because that's normally where they put the title, and they'll be like, "Oh, read it on." And I think the popular one is like Galatia or something, and they were like, "Link
Mm.
is in bio," and I'm like immediately like, "No, I'm not doing
Yeah.
this." Um, do you think that serial fiction is like a good avenue for those who maybe want to start writing? I know a lot of people started on like Wattpad and writing fan fiction and stuff like
Yeah.
that. What's kind of your thought process with that?
I think it is a really fun way to build an audience. They don't necessarily follow you outside of that platform, but it is a way to hone your craft. I found when I'm basically publishing chapter by chapter, I can see the response. Usually on these platforms there's ways of people commenting or like liking the chapter, and I can see like, "Oh, I have a ton of likes here, and then I have a little bit of a drop off on this chapter, and then it picks back up. Okay, well, they were willing to continue to read, but maybe something is off with this chapter. Let's tweak it." Um, Another thing too is on Kindle Vella and on Tapas, there's the opportunity to turn these into other products afterwards. So Mosswood Apothecary is my next one, and I'm going to be doing a Kickstarter on that one. And there'll be, the paperback ebook, all of those other pieces as well, similar to how Mandrake Manor is set up. But I had the opportunity beforehand to basically write it along with people and to sort of find that joy in writing, and be able to develop these characters. And the fun part for me, with someone who will constantly go back to the first chapter and edit, is I've already published it. I can't go back. I have already made the decision that I said this is set in stone, and now I have to live with my choices, and I have to keep moving forward. And for someone like me, that prevents me from constantly restarting, because I can't restart. I have to just go through, and I have to figure out how I write myself into corners and how to get back out of them.
So moving on to the actual book and everything. So Mandrake Manor, what was your, I guess like kind of connecting with the whole serial fiction and stuff? Who are some creators that you adore, right? And then in more traditional fiction, who are some authors that you really like find yourself inspired from?
Yeah, I mean, I love TJ Klune. His works are very similar to that cozy aspect, queer storytelling, a lot of that no homophobia kind of place. I grew up on Tamora Pierce and on Garth Nix. I absolutely love them. The Circle of Magic series is like a huge thing that impacts me. I still think about it to this day. And then I want to say that like the first really big, chunky fantasy book that I read was Lyriel, which is the second book in the Abortion series. And I didn't know that when I read it. And I fell in love with this character in sort of this magic school where this character doesn't fit in. They don't really have the same magic as everyone else. They don't really know how things work. And then they just play in this world of death. And I'm just like, what is happening? I love this. Um, I later learned about Sabriel, which is the first book in that series, and while I enjoyed that, I have my heart is for Lyriel and for that piece. And then obviously the K Applegate Animorphs, like I was addicted to that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like how I grew up was with those sort of three authors.
And the Animorphs books, they really hit you with some like really sad ones every once in a
Yeah.
while.
They sure do.
Oh
Hmm.
man. Okay, so not to monopolize the episode or anything, Kayla.
The TV show was also devastating, but
I'm
Oh,
sure.
I
Yeah.
love
that's
the
beyond
TV
the
show.
point. Um, do we want to jump into?
Whatever you want.
I'm ready to jump into
You are the
spoilers.
driver of this car
I
today.
love this.
We made a decision behind the screens that Kayla doesn't get
Yes.
to just listen today.
No, I have to participate today. Okay, readers, I'm just gonna jump into spoilers because I have things that I need to say. First of all, wait, I'll give you a second to stop listening, go read the book, and then come back.
Yeah, a second. Go for it.
First of all, how dare that
Totally.
ending?
Yeah,
I
100%.
was listening to the audiobook and then I was just cruising along. I'm like, oh, cool, awesome, amazing. And then all of a sudden it was like the ending credits. I'm like, no, it can't end like that. What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
how dare you?
You're welcome.
Yeah.
How long
I
will I have to wait?
So I am currently working on my third serial. This one's with Tapas.
Hmm.
I am scheduled to end writing that serial by the end of April, and then I can pick up Mandrake Manor 2, and I'll start it, and it'll be a serial at first, but
Hmm.
that is the plan.
Bet. Okay.
Gotta look into tapas. I love the name,
I
first off.
also love the
Yeah,
name.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
It's
also
such
love
a
it.
cool. It's such a
the
cute name.
Hispanics in us are really happy with
Yeah.
tapas.
Like
Mm-hmm.
yes, they are fun and delicious. Who was your favorite character? This isn't really spoiler, but who was your favorite character to write?
Okay, so I
'Cause
love
they're
the
amazing.
sass of Frankie so much.
Yes.
That allows basically Matt, Frankie, and August are facets of what I would say are myself. Like they're
Mhm.
just different versions. Like
Mhm.
they're all queer characters. Matt is sort of meant to be in this book the palatable version.
Right.
And then we have Frankie, who is like the hypersexual, and then we
Yep.
have August, who is the non-binary, and also just a little bit more of the closed back, or like the one
Yeah.
that doesn't talk as much. So like they're all just different versions of me. So I really love sitting in these characters and sort of playing with that. But I would say if I want banter, which I love writing banter so much, so hopefully you all like reading banter, but I
Yes.
would say Frankie is the one.
Yeah. It was funny because I think it was yesterday, the day before, I told Steph that I love Mandrake Manor so much because I felt like it was written specifically for me. Because August is such a relatable character, especially with their social anxiety and like they don't
Hmm.
want to leave and talk to people. Like,
Right?
no, they want to be comfy cozy with a book, So that was extremely relatable for me. Have you found like oh, how do I want to ask this? Have you found anybody like any side characters resonating with your readers? I mean, it started as a serial. Was there anybody who was like who really stuck out that like you maybe weren't gonna keep on, but then like they were so loved that you were like, yeah, okay.
That's a great question. I mean, so my beta reader fell in love with Remy like right away, which was great
Yeah.
because I was like, there's so much about Remy that I love exploring,
Yes.
and I really wanted to take care. So Remy being a trans man, I really wanted to take
Mhm.
care of that being presented both on the page because I felt like that was really important and presented as like well as I could possibly do it, which hopefully again hopefully I did it justice, but I really love exploring Remy and sort of like all of the little silly quirks of, a werewolf with hair loss problems. I just thought it was so funny.
Poor
Um,
Remy.
poor Remy. Helena was really fun to explore more of. I didn't know much about her and her motivations to start. And
Mhm.
then it was really fun to just sort of play with that as I kept learning more about her.
Did you always have it that she would basically be Melinda's little puppet?
No,
No,
not at
no,
all.
that was.
That sort of so this one being the serial, and I did have an outline for things. There were wiggle room, and
Mhm.
there was a point in like the middle of the story was like, oh, this is what's happening. Like I finally figured out like exactly what it was, and luckily I had laid enough breadcrumbs that it made sense at least to
Yes.
me in the story flow. But yeah, that was one of those things that I was like, oh, I like this. I like where this is headed.
What was the thought process behind keeping Helena instead of just exiling her?
I didn't want to kill a character. I didn't feel like
Mhm.
it was the right thing to do. And I
Mhm.
Mhm.
felt like she had a place. Like
Yeah.
it's sort of the way that Mandrake Manor is that everyone has the right to be here. It's just that
Mhm.
maybe you just needed to think about things a little bit differently. Maybe you need a timeout, but we're not gonna exile you, you know?
Just gonna make you a familiar and
Yeah.
make you teach us things.
She might get her body back. We don't know.
Maybe, maybe
I love
someday.
authors that don't
And
kill off their characters.
Same.
a little grabby hands raccoon. Come on.
It's hilarious when the raccoon popped up, and eventually I was like, oh, that sounds like it was. At first, I thought it was Helena's like familiar. Like I was like, oh,
Mhm.
that's, and then I was like, oh no, that is Helena. That was hilarious and wonderful and fantastic. The house. The house is
Yes.
like its own character. Did you pull any inspiration from specifically from Charmed on the house, or did you sort of like come
Yeah,
up with something
a
yourself?
lot of things were pulled from Charmed, but I would say the house, yeah, yes ish. It's also I it had been a while, but I really love the Haunting of Hill House and like the whole concept that the house is alive and it eats people, and sort of like what's a funnier turn on that? Like a house that's just alive and is sassy. Like,
Yeah.
what are y'all doing in here? Like, I'll show you this door when I need to show you this door, or something along those lines.
um, when you described the book, I thought of the book from Hocus Pocus. Was that
Hmm.
the intent, or were you more like Book of Shadows?
Uh, it's its own thing.
It's
Really,
something.
I think with this one, it's the generational book, so that would flow more with the Book of Shadows. But
Hmm.
really, yeah, I would say it's a mix of all of that.
It's just such a good story. It's such a good like cozy yet mysterious like story, and it does not feel like it was serialized, like it was started as a serial story. Were you when and I know we kind of touched upon this a little bit already, but like when you were transitioning it from serial to book, did you find that easier since you started off in a yeah.
Yeah. So with Mandrake Manor, and I would say this is the same with Nerds, which is the National Recently Deceased Services, which
Hmm.
is the ghosty one. Both of them, there wasn't a ton of shifts or changes that happened between what was serialized and what was novelized.
Hmm.
Um, I can see it. It would be very difficult to novelize Mandrake Manor because a lot of the POV flips would have to be maybe reconfigured or expanded more, and I feel like that would lose on the pacing a little bit. There's some potential here and there where things could be expanded on or explained a little more maybe, but I think the overall thing, I didn't really want to lose that vibe. I have some ideas as to how I'll tackle it in season 2 and really expand, especially with Matt's character. Because there is a plan for Matt. I just didn't want it to be the surprise right off the bat.
Right.
Um, and so there's a plan for him and how his relationship will go in the future.
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, I'm really excited to explore that because I think that he has a lot of uh, depth that didn't get to get shown on the page. That I'm excited for season 2 for that.
Does that mean we get more Dimitri in season 2?
Maybe Dimitri
Maybe.
is away at the moment.
Yes, I'm aware. Again, how dare?
He's a
Oh,
little
well.
he's a little busy right now.
He is, and it's a little sad. Did you always set out to have Dimitri poof?
um so the funny thing is, originally Matt's love interest was somebody else, and Dimitri took that. And
Mhm.
I was more than fine with that because I was like, this makes a lot of sense,
Mhm.
sort of. It streamlined the relationships, which I think the intent of it being a cozy fantasy over it being a romance is that we're just sort of like in the fun vibes, and we're just like,
Right.
yeah, everyone's hooking up kind of fast. And it kind of reflects how like my partner and I met. We met we met at a bar during one evening really close to my college. We talked all night long until like 4 in the morning, and then I met his parents within a week, and I hung out with them all day while he was at work. So like for me, this is a very fast relationship that
The
kind of
gay
just kind of,
agenda.
yeah,
Truly.
and so it helped that it was Dimitri, and I think it made a lot of sense because I think that I had originally set Dimitri to be the older gentleman, pretty much his
Mhm.
father, and then I was like, no, it's somebody that has to, sort of cause this desire for Matt to want to go to Henbane Hollow, and it had to be somebody younger that sort of made him fluster a little.
Right.
And then it just made a lot of sense. But yeah, that wasn't his original love interest, and so I thought that was fun to explore that.
That is that's so much fun. Slightly on topic, off topic. Are you a Blanche, Rose, Dorothy, or Sophia?
Oof.
What a great question that I don't know if I can answer. I think realistically I'm a rose. Do I want
Mhm.
to be a rose?
No.
I don't know.
It's it's like realistically, I wish I was a Sophia, but I'm actually
Yeah.
more like a Dorothy. Like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We all want to be
Ah,
Sophia, right?
I is that Golden Girls question
It
mark?
is,
Yeah,
yes.
never
Yes.
seen it.
You
Yes.
live in Florida and you've never seen Golden Girls?
I'm sorry that I was born in '98. I don't know what you want from me.
I
It's
So
I
I
need you to
fine.
rectify that
there's so many things.
though.
Um, so I'm kind of curious going. So I usually have a lot more of the like writing
Mhm.
esque questions. What went into your decision? It could have easily have just been like because of the platform and everything, but what went into your decision with like no spice um in this book?
Honestly, I didn't go with spice in the next book or the book after that either. And I think it's just because what I was seeing in the space, and obviously, I mean, like TJ Klune doesn't have it, but a lot of the popular more like TikTok queer fantasy has a lot of spice in it. And that has its place, and I have nothing wrong with that. But also I
Mhm.
was like, what if we just had like the happy Schitt's Creek style books where we can just
Mhm.
sit here and giggle, and we don't have to worry about the spice. Um, because it also opens the opportunity for younger audiences to potentially pick it up. But then it also, the space for maybe more demi or asexual people who may not want to read the spice but still want the queer stories.
Yes.
Um, I do have a potential series with a co-writer that does have some more spice in it. It is still cozy fantasy that we're working on, and hopefully that'll come out soon. But at the same time, I'm really enjoying just like either the fade to black insinuations of like, sexy time here and there, but I'm just enjoying this sort of cozy queer stories without the spice.
So, did Frankie and Remy break in the rug? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, definitely.
For sure they did.
Because, like, I was kind of like, did they? Did they? Maybe eventually, sort of,
I knew that, like, because that was such a, like, silly thing that I kept adding in because it just made me giggle as I was writing
it's
it,
just funny.
that I had to have that, like, 2 paragraphs of them going to town, but
Fooling
then
around.
yeah, of course, Matt and, August have to walk in and be like, "Oh my god, what are you doing?" That just I had to do it because even though it was, like, the tiniest little spice, I knew that had to be in there.
Yeah, like you couldn't not talk about the rug and then not have Frankie break the rug in, like it
Yeah,
just in
exactly.
front of the fireplace. Like it was a
Uh-huh.
thing. It had to happen. Um,
We've all been there.
the audiobook. How did
Yeah.
you go about getting the voice actor? Because they did a wonderfully fantastic job juggling
Yes.
all of those characters.
Oh, yeah. Kurt Graves is top tier.
Yes.
Um, so funny story with that. I was on TikTok. I
Mhm.
was seeing a lot of audiobook narrators. I'm pretty sure the algorithm just can read my brain and knows exactly what I'm looking for when I want it.
Isn't it
And
terrifying?
it is
Yes.
terrifying and I love it. I just
Yeah.
absolutely love it. I'm like, all right. And as long as it doesn't get dark. When it starts to get too dark, I'm like, we gotta fix that. Um, but no, so I had found 2 narrators. I can't remember who the other one was, but one of them was Kurt Graves. I went to his website, I listened to some samples, and I was like, I love this. Like, why
Mhm.
wouldn't I want this? So I sent him a message and I asked, like, would you be interested in this project? I think we had a little bit of back and forth, and of course he was interested in it. And then I realized who Kurt Graves was, which was such a silly thing because I just didn't I thought I did enough research and I just didn't. I have listened to Kurt Graves before in audio. He's done over 250 audiobooks. He's a very popular narrator in queer fiction. And for him to have been excited to do my work, I was
Yeah.
just like, oh my God. Like if I had known any of this, I would have never asked because it was just like I would have felt like there was this barrier between it. And so I'm extremely happy that he signed on to do it and I absolutely adore it so much.
Yeah, he did a truly fantastic job bringing life to
Hmm.
the core three, as we'll call them lovingly. Um, what was it like, you know, s- with all of this in your brain, like before you ever sat down to like write it out? What was that like?
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to tell a story. I knew that like this would be my love letter to Charmed.
Hmm.
I was binge watching Schitt's Creek, and so I knew that it had to have that in there. And then I sat down one day, and I don't know if I have the actual page in my little journal over here, but I sat down one day, and I don't. Um, I had started to write out like a little tiny plot, and then what sort of so I call it a story hypothesis, which I will go into in a minute. But basically, it's like a sentence that makes up the theme or the heart of the story.
Hmm.
Um, and that and the story synopsis has stayed true the entire time. Like it hasn't changed since that day I wrote it, which is wild because usually you have a lot of changes. The names of the characters changed, but it was always about the sense of finding oneself or identity, but
Hmm.
not being a queer coming out story, but more of like using the stasis of being a part of a community
Hmm.
and then basically finding love and building that and growing it and then the protection of the place that you've been to. So is this really big focus of like you can't truly know yourself until you let love in, and when you do you can protect others, and that
Right.
was sort of the statement that I used for the entire novel. So that's sort of how I, honestly, like I wrote that, and that has stuck with me since I outlined it, since I wrote the whole thing, and so that's sort of how the process expanded into writing it.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
How, not to interrupt or
Go
anything,
ahead.
how does your what does your writing process look like in terms of like do you sit down every day and go like, "Oh, I'm going to write for 30 minutes today?"
At this point, Yes-ish.
Mhm.
So I with the Tapas project that I'm on, I give them 2 edited chapters a week. And so during the week I outline, draft, and edit until it is in publishable state for each of those chapters, and then I move on to the next one. I have an outline of about 60 chapters with a sentence each, and so I go to that and I look at the sentence, and then I sort of just keep basically growing it out until it is a draft or a chapter, and then I go in and I edit it. Um, I usually go in the attempt to break the outline because I think that that's fun. It helps it keep it dynamic and makes me challenge what I have written versus where the story is headed. So I've had to like reroute the outline a couple of times, but that's sort of my process, and that's how the serial fiction process has been. With both Mandrake Manor and Mosswood, it was one chapter a week, but it was still the same concept.
Gotcha. With obviously your story taking place in a world of like without homophobia and stuff like that, especially because we're both two very fruity ladies, right?
Mhm.
How important was it for you to bring a voice to adding like diversity into publishing, right? Because thankfully in the year that we're in, diversity isn't so hard to find in publishing, but it is still something
Mhm.
that you kind of end up finding yourself having to like fight for.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is the main reason we try to use whatever platform we garner
yeah.
to like continue shining a light. But how important was that for you? What was it like adding a voice to specific elements or people that you might not resonate with because you aren't of that word just left me.
Flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not that
Yeah,
flavor of fruit.
yeah. So, my writing journey or publishing journey kinda started back in 2019, and I would say a lot of the original works I had was a female character, straight, but that's sort of where I ended up writing. And I hopefully I did them right. I feel like I did even when I started, but regardless of that, there was a point when writing Nerds, with my co-writer, and we wrote, um so just a little bit of background of what Nerds is. It is a bureau of ghost hunters. They go to a small town, and it's basically Ghostbusters meets The Office. And we follow this goofy new agent who joins the force, and he is being trained by this older agent who is very ready to retire. When we started the novel, we put it in the old agent's perspective for the first chapter, and he was an older gentleman, and the co-writer that I had, Jeff Elkins, he's a straight man, but he was more than happy to turn that older gentleman into a gay man, and to have him have a husband that he could talk to on the phone or whatever for a quick moment. It was a super simple switch, but it was something that I just kind of asked, like, could we have some side queer characters? The main character we never decided. Um, and I just kind of assumed he could be queer, but never really wanted to explore that because I hadn't yet. And then partway through the serial, I was like, "Why aren't we digging into this? Like, why? Are you okay if I make him a queer person and have him date one of the other people?" And he's like, "Absolutely, I am." And so like, it was sort of this like strange permission I almost needed, and I don't know if it necessarily was from him or just like this general like acceptance that I can be a voice in the queer community to actually write queer stories, and that there isn't like some person that's like waiting there to be like yes or no. Um
Mhm.
and so that was really the Nerds was the one that had that big switch of just like, yeah, of course. And then ever since then, my like motto is just to write unapologetically queer stories.
Mhm.
um and I've been enjoying it. I've been um loving to add the multiple or multitudes of different voices. So, like in Mandrake Manor, so I am non-binary. So one of the characters is non-binary for the main POVs, but I knew that I wanted trans representation on the page, and so I follow a lot of creators who are trans. And I just happen to, and I really inspired by what they say and like how they talk to their communities and how they just talk and present in general. And I really wanted that sort of reflection on the page because I'm like, I don't know if I see enough of that, and I want to see more of that. And I was like, I'll do it. I really encourage other people to do it, other people to sort of have those characters and put them more in the forefront. I don't know if I could manage writing a main POV in a experience that is too far outside of my own. But I think having those side characters improves the world. I wanted to include sapphic characters in this
Hmm.
story as well, which we see later on. And I also didn't want them to be evil sapphic characters, but
Appreciate
we do
that.
have some evil tendencies of them. So I felt like if this is going to be a queer world, everyone's queer, you know,
Yeah.
why not include everything on the page that I possibly can.
What is it like co-authoring? Because I think co-authoring in general is so interesting to me, but especially if it's in like a serial format.
Hmm.
How's
She
that work?
wants to write with me so bad.
And Kayla keeps telling me no because she thinks I'm ugly.
That's
Oh.
BS.
um so with nerds, my co-author Jeff, he will draft the first the draft it, and then I'll go in and I'll make the edits. That's how our process works. I also have I like to co-author. I like to, you know, have multiple options, I guess. So
The
I have
queer
another
agenda.
co-author. You know, whatever that means. Um I have another co-author who we do back and forth chapters, and we'll edit it to the best of our ability and then sort of hand it over, and they'll edit it away. Um, so this is another story, but in January of 2020, before the world ended,
Mhm.
I went to California on a like little writing retreat thing. I stayed in a haunted house, and
Nice.
I a haunted mansion to be
Let's
exact,
go.
with 14 other authors, or like 13 other authors. And we were paired up, and my co-author ended up being, for a short story, ended up being my author of the Leah Ackerman series, which is right behind me. Um, and so we wrote a short story together, and that short story really taught me how to like figure out how to use his voice that he had written and expand it and let it grow and flourish without putting my voice too heavily into it, and
Mhm.
also be willing to just throw whatever doesn't work away regardless of who wrote it. And I feel like that process really taught me the best part about co-authoring, which is that like at the end of the day you're both looking to make something that is equally both yours and is its own thing, and it is okay what is taken from it and what has to get reshaped. And so at the end of the day, like I'm more than fine scrapping chapters. So I think that's the big thing when co-authoring, is to not hold on to the words and just be like, it will be what it is when it is done, and I am happy with that.
That's a really good
Fantastic.
attitude to have,
Yeah.
especially if you tend to be more perfectionist in nature.
Hmm.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
sometimes it's hard to let go.
it is. And like there are some sentence structures where and I don't do it as much now, but I'll look at a sentence structure and I'll be like, that's not how I'd write it. And I'm like, but that's how they'd write it, and it's not terrible. So there's no reason for me to edit it. And
Right,
it's sort of like that mental process of like, do I have to change every single word? No.
right.
And so then like where is sort of that barrier, and figure out where that is, in order to really work with someone. I would highly recommend, if you want to do start co-authoring, consider doing a short story first, because
Mhm.
that will teach you very quickly. It'll teach you if you work well together, and it will teach you if you can have that communication between each other.
Why are you
um,
giving her ideas? Look at her
it's just
face.
very important. And then also, of course, contracts are super duper important, especially when talking about co-authoring stuff.
She thinks I'm ugly.
You're gonna
And that my
try
words are
and
bad.
steal my soul. Well, you won't take the kids, so my soul it is.
um Man,
It's
the world is so big.
it is. It is. Do you feel uh and this may be kind of a silly question, but like it felt especially poignant isn't the right word, but it's the one I'm going to use. Reading a story about how, you know, these supernatural characters feel as if like it's like the town that they're living in is just so normal and normalized. And like given the current state of the world, specifically the country. Like, it felt like a really good, like, parallel message of, like, we are so, like, this country is so busy working against what is becoming the norm, that it is sucking the soul and life out of, like, was that the ever something that you thought
Were
would
you
be
in
a parallel?
were you in internal despair?
Was I in internal despair while writing a cozy fantasy? No, so I do understand, and I think that reflecting on it, there is that like Stepford vibe of Mandrake Manor. What's
Mhm.
happening to the neighborhood is it's getting suburbanized.
Right.
Which I don't know if that's a real word, but I loved using it. The suburbanification was my a favorite word of mine. Um, but it's this idea of muting the supernatural or muting the queer and
Mhm.
turning it into the normal. And I think that there is a really big commentary, or just like um a big thing that it was sort of part of my life, especially when growing up in a small town, of just like conceal a lot of stuff, don't
Yeah.
tell people this part, and try to act normal. And so it is definitely a lot of queer experience,
Mhm.
and just a lot of general experience of people trying to be able to be their full and true selves within a group or a society, but then realizing that there's still this strange force that tries to sort of make everyone uniform and make everyone the same. And it's sort of that combativeness between the two.
Right.
I think that was definitely something that sat in the back of my head.
It's definitely something that I was thinking about as I was listening. Like, man, this is such a great message, but I just wish it wasn't happening in 2025.
Right? Yeah. Well.
Yeah. But it really is, listeners, a truly fantastic, great, cozy story of just a group of queer people who are trying to navigate life after one of them inherits a house that is its own entity, and they go from not knowing anything about the supernatural to fumbling about in such an awkward, excessive way sometimes. I do appreciate though that Frankie and August sort of just like accepted it. They're like, okay,
Mhm.
cool, whatever. And then you have Matt who's just like, what? No, this isn't, no, no. Do
Yeah.
you have like, I got the big like horror fan vibes, like horror movie vibes.
Mhm.
Like, do you have a favorite? Because I love a good horror flick, and
Oh,
I'm just
a
curious
good
if you've got.
horror flick.
Yeah.
Okay. What is this called? Stir of Echoes with Kevin Bacon in it.
Yes. Yes.
So good.
That was
So
a good
good.
one.
I love
That was a
that
good
one.
one.
Um Man, what was a recent one to watch? I did watch Heretic recently. I will say I enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
won't say it was amazing. It was definitely in that list of like, I love A24 movies though.
They
Honestly,
do some good
they
ones.
slap nearly every time.
They do. They do.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will say, novel wise, if you want to check out a good YA horror, The Honeys by Ryan LaSala. It's really good.
Bet.
It's Mean Girls Go to Summer Camp with Bees.
Nice.
Okay. I'm here for it.
Nice.
I also would recommend Let's Split Up, which is very Scooby Doo meets Scream, if that's something that would be up your alley, by
Yeah,
Bill
that
Wood.
one's by Bill Wood. We
Yeah.
love him.
We
The
love
second
him.
one should be coming out in September, I think.
Maybe.
Maybe. Don't quote me on it, guys. um yeah, I mean, I think what you've done with this one is really cool. The fact that you were able to do so much with serial fiction really makes me want to dive back into the trenches.
Oh, Lord. Oh,
We'll
Do it.
see.
no.
There's a lot over there.
Yeah.
Um
If y'all find stuff on Wattpad, you gotta let me know. All right. I will PayPal you $10 if you find her on Wattpad.
Crap. Gotta go incognito with my name. Catch me as Gertrude.
Gertrude. Now we know, but
Yeah.
You won't know the rest. Yeah, I think I've picked your brain enough. I don't know if there's anything Kayla wants to add.
I just cannot wait for more Mandrake Manor.
Mhm.
Like, I really can't.
I'm really excited for Mosswood.
That one too, yes.
I don't know if you saw the video of us or the video of me, but you made me cry on a random whatever day I opened the box.
I
Same.
I
did
was
see
like,
that.
I'm a little baby. But this would just kind of be the time that you can talk to the readers,
Sure.
Tell us what's
explain.
going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What you got.
shout yourself
So-
out.
So yeah, I do have Mosswood Apothecary coming out. It is a cozy queer fantasy adventure. This one is like a love letter to Studio Ghibli films and to
Yeah.
Full Metal Alchemist with a queer romance.
Love the Metal Alchemist.
And I have a ton of character art that will be going into the Kickstarter. Lots of illustrations and lots of really pretty things. I cannot wait. I am waiting for the sample copy to come, so I don't have a official release date for the Kickstarter, but we're looking for sometime in like May, maybe late April. But regardless, there will be actual copies of it afterwards as well. And then I do have another project that will be on Tapas. I don't have any like official things about it. It's just the unnamed project at the moment. But
Nice.
this will be coming out in May as well. So
Wow, busy
Yeah.
month, busy month.
yeah,
It was a busy
apparently.
month.
Yeah.
I like it.
But thank you again for joining us today. Thank you listeners for being here. If you haven't been told already, you are important, you are loved. All the links that are of importance will be down in the box below, and we will see you guys in the next episode.